all of you came from different parts of the country to come back home to have your pieces played this week. What is it like to have your hometown orchestra play your music?
It's surreal. It's definitely a crazy experience.
Yeah, if I think about that too long, I will start crying. I remember I've cried in probably all of it. Mahler 9 back there. Yeah, just so many tears have been shed in this house because of transformational, transcendent experiences on stage. And then to be here and have the same orchestra that created those fundamental experiences for me play my music, I can't think about that too long. My brain will explode.
I know that for a lot of people, the idea of writing music seems, it's not something we do in school. Like art, painting is something that we all do, from when we're young, but writing music is something that's a little more removed. So sometimes when you ask people about, oh, you're a composer, they imagine that you just sort of write it down and then that's it. And but that's not the case, right?
Right. I feel like the craft is really a process of self-discovery. Sometimes I listen to pieces that I wrote years ago and I figure if I wrote that now, I would change this, and this. And I think that's a testament to how much I've grown. I want to make sure that when I do listen to something that I wrote last year, that I would feel differently now. And I'm always moving in some direction that's closer to myself, that's more real.
I completely agree, yeah. I think all of your loves, there might be some loves that you're embarrassed by. Say, you like an artist that, is too mainstream or whatever, and you also like, say, like heavy metal or something.
Right.
You like Ariana Grande and heavy metal, say. But that's what makes you unique, and that will show in your music.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes, like when I was a younger composer, I was kind of afraid of, drawing from these places that maybe were a little bit strange and maybe, not as mainstream, I guess, in terms of composition. But now that I'm older, I realize that that's exactly what will give me a unique voice, is really just drawing on the things that are unique about you.
Mm-hmm.
Writing for an audience in mind is really difficult because obviously audience members change and are different from concert to concert depending on what ensemble you're hearing playing. But I kind of like to think of it like when I write my music, I am on some level writing it for myself because it's my music.
Right.
But also when you think about the audience, I think of like, oh, what would an audience of a bunch of Viets think? But it's not like me now as Viet. It's like what would an audience of like a bunch of like 13-year-old Viets like? I think a lot of people like me when I was 13 really love music and are open-minded to lots of different types of music and want to hear lots of things, but they just don't maybe know a ton about it yet or know how it's put together. But that doesn't really matter as long as it is honest and like you are saying what is unique to you, because ultimately, like a lot of people share influences and a lot of people like the same things, but only you really on this earth are the person who likes exactly the things you like,
right,
and are influenced by exactly the things that you're influenced by. So it's kind of, I remember a teacher saying like, don't worry about writing a piece like as good as Stravinsky, worry about writing a piece that only you can write. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what audience members ultimately enjoy listening to.
Right.
It's hard to get an orchestra together to play your music, mm-hmm. and it lives in your head for so long, and then finally it's out there. Somebody's taking your creation and shaping it as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, sometimes you may like it and may not like it.
Every kind of rehearsal experience, especially for orchestra, is something that you do have to kind of prepare yourself for, because you have been living in this world, hearing the piece in your head, and then all of a sudden it's this live thing, and you have to treat it kind of like a living being. It has to crawl before it walks, you know? So you have to be patient, but it's also, you're just so consumed with like the magic of it.
You learn a lot.
Yeah.
Even when things are sounding the way that you're thinking they're going to sound, it's like, well, why is that? And usually that's kind of the whole rehearsal process, is trying to figure out why things sound the way they do, and how do you make it sound the way you want it to sound.
Yeah.
So in rehearsals, I'm like equally excited and horrified, and ultimately just like really grateful.
I want musicians to be musicians, and who knows, that may change. I may, sort of over-notate as I get older. Who knows? But right now, my honest opinion is, I'm just overwhelmed at seeing all the music that's happening as a result of just me making tiny little decisions years ago. So, yeah.
So Elise, you grew up here in Atlanta, right?
Yes,
Could
I
you tell
did.
us more about growing up here?
I really enjoyed a lot of different communities around Atlanta growing up, which was really great. I think that's something I love about Atlanta, is just it's so kind of diverse in culture, and just you meet so many different types of people. So it was great growing up here. I did so many things. I was a swimmer. I swam on swim teams for about 13 years. I played softball. I did all sorts of academic stuff, and art, drawing. I was very, very busy
Wow, sounds
as a
like
kid. So yeah,
a little bit of everything.
yeah, a little bit of everything.
But now you're
Yeah.
sort of, the focus has been really becoming as a composer. This piece that we're performing of yours this week, Bite Your Tongue, tell us about the title. I mean, that's a fascinating title. I mean, tell us, where did it come from?
Yeah, I mean, so the whole idea about the piece is not being able to speak. Having thoughts, having things that you need to say, but not being quite able to articulate them. And there's a poem in the beginning that I put in the score that the piece didn't originate from the poem, but after I wrote the piece, I realized that it was saying exactly what I was trying to say in the piece. And part of the poem is, all my life I have ate my tongue, ate my tongue, ate my tongue. And so I kind of flipped that for the title. Instead of it being personal, I have ate my tongue, it's kind of on the other side of the person saying, bite your tongue.
And when I was asking you about influences for your musical writing, you had quite a diverse selection from Stravinsky to Aphex Twin, Viet, Alarm Will Sound.
Yeah.
You also had Slick Back.
Yeah.
And so some of these things I had not heard or listened to. And so I really appreciated just, being able to delve into some other things. And listening to it, I can definitely hear these influences in your music. So when you're writing, are these influences something that's very conscious for you? Or it's like, I like this from, say, Stravinsky, I like this from Polanski, I like this or that, or is it something that has sort of, you've taken it in and sort of digested and made it your own, and then it's coming out much later?
The best way to learn is through imitation in some ways. You're very consciously like, I loved this part of this piece, so let me try to do, something like that, something that in that technique. In this piece, there's just so much that I've absorbed that I can kind of use things from my subconscious and not necessarily be able to assign it. But maybe, listening back, I can be like, oh yeah, of course, I love that moment from that, electronic track, and all of a sudden it showed up in an orchestra piece.
But you were still able to make it distinctly your own, which is, always that's the goal as a composer, I suppose. To students who are interested in composition, who are going to go study composition, what is some advice that you would give?
I think the best advice is to always just write what you love. And as with any relationship, it has to be stretched and molded as you go through life and as you grow. But you still have that love to kind of keep intact for your music.
So we have a setup on a laptop. We have these tracks that you created, and you created this with a friend. Yeah? Go and tell us a little bit more about these tracks that you created?
I did, yeah. I created them with my friend Sarah, who's a soprano at school with me. And the process was really great because she was just so open to what I was trying to do, and we would actually there's this section in the piece when all the strings are kind of doing tremolos, and they're emulating static, covering up the vocal part, and I was looking for a really choked sound, so she would sit there and she would choke herself and try to speak and breathe, and so we really just tried to transform, my thoughts and that whole situation and put it in the track. The idea behind the track, the tape part and the orchestra part is that the orchestra acts as kind of the brain behind the speaking. So the tape part is what actually comes out. These stutters, they're like beginnings of words and choked breathing, and then behind that, there are these neurons firing, thoughts connecting, really in an anxious state when, your thoughts are just colliding in your brain and you struggle to make sense of them, but you're trying to articulate yourself and make a statement. Basically just a back and forth between that and the conflict, I guess, within and then also on the outside.
D. Good.
You grew up in Marietta, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so what was it like growing up there? And did you come to Atlanta a lot to see the orchestra?
Yeah, Marietta is only half an hour away.
Okay.
I went to a high school called Lassiter. We had a really big band program there, so I loved that because band was where I kind of found my place as a kid and as a teenager.
So the piece that we're performing of yours, this this week is something that we don't hear so much these days, which is a double oboe concerto. But it's a genre that was very popular in the Baroque era. So you were saying that Albinoni, Marcello, Vivaldi, all had these various concerti for two oboes. So what drew you to this form?
I wrote a piece for double reed quintet, so two oboes, English horn, two bassoons, called Extra Fancy. Piece where I kind of set music in motion, and then I started to fold in these weird extended techniques like multiphonics and double trills and things like that. And so for Extraordinarily Fancy, I wanted to like take that to the next level. So it wasn't like I gradually fold in those techniques. It's like where one of the oboists is ordinarily fancy and the other one is extra fancy. And it's kind of a battle between the two, where one is like, I want to sound just like, you know, ordinarily beautiful playing my Baroque concerto. And then the other oboist is like, this is boring to me. Like, let's try this instead.
Right, right.
And so it's a conversation, and just like, I think it's a fun time hearing them kind of bicker back and forth like that.
No, it's so much fun to just to hear them, and I know that with Liz and Zach playing, it's going to be, you know, see how they ham it up.
Yeah.
Because it really is a dialogue.
The first 2 minutes of the piece, I was basically trying to do my best Vivaldi impression.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I couldn't sound like Vivaldi. It doesn't sound like Vivaldi, I don't think. It sounds like if Viet Cuong was a Baroque, like Italian composer, I think. But it's like also kind of like tongue-in-cheek in that when you're in college and you study music theory, you learn a lot of Baroque music. You learn how chords are put together from like Bach
Right,
music.
right.
And so it's kind of also like this, me doing like a wink at like all the music theory I had to learn that I never really used much in my own music, at least explicitly.
Right.
But here it was like, oh, if I really want to sound like Bach, I have to follow these rules that I learned in college. And then it's like about the piece after that first 2 minutes, it kind of like, it messes up that music. So
Right.
it takes that music and does like all sorts of stuff to it, to where it almost sounds like some of it, it's like Vivaldi if he went to the club or something.
Right, right. No, that's great. I mean, you really have to have a mastery of these techniques from the Baroque era, but you're mashing it up. I mean, I think it's brilliant.
What does it sound like when you have this music that's like kind of has Baroque chord progressions, but then there also has this like four on the floor, like bass drum
Right.
underneath it all. So that's two things that kind of don't belong together. And then it's also like this like rising modulation thing that also Stevie Wonder does.
Right, right.
And I think this piece has some of these things that I want people to laugh.
Right.
Like when one of the oboists plays, like when the first oboist plays their little melody, and then the other oboist is like, no, I'm gonna play it with multiphonics. It's like I want people to think of these extended techniques like in a fun, whimsical light.
And I know that you were going to maybe play a little bit and talk a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the whole piece is based on this descending fourth motive
Okay.
in B minor.
Right.
And I kind of, this is used a lot in Baroque music. It's so
Yeah.
from a Bach E minor fugue. And so I basically wanted to use that as a starting point. So it's this. And that basically is, the whole piece comes out of that.
Yeah.
The rest of the piece is kind of like a theme and variations based on that,
Okay.
in a way that it repeats that music, but it distorts it.
Right.
So it's distorted when the second oboist plays multiphonics on the melody, because that sounds weird. It almost, if you've never heard an oboe multiphonic, I guess you'll hear it shortly, but it's like if you were to plug an oboe into like a guitar distortion pedal.
It's such a pleasure to be able to perform your music this week and to share it with the audience here in Atlanta, your hometown. And I hope to have more opportunities to perform more of your music, and I look forward to your other pieces. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you to all the members of the orchestra. And I mean, it's a dream, I'm sure, like quite literally, to be working with ASO. So thank you.
Of course, thank you. maybe you can tell us a little bit about your story, about how you, I know that you're not originally from Atlanta, but how you ended up here.
Sure. My family's Jamaican. I was born in the Bahamas, but came to the U.S. when I was 10. I went to middle school in Houston and then high school onwards in the metro Atlanta area. I went to Brookwood High School, played in the band there, played bass clarinet for 4 years there, and then went to undergrad at Emory and did my master's afterwards as well. So Atlanta has been home for quite some time.
We're thrilled to be doing your piece, Lluvia, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your process for writing a piece.
I find that I work with words a lot. So a lot of my music, even though it's in an orchestral context, there's still the use of words with the soprano soloist. When I decide upon the text, a lot of it is just getting it into my body. I'm a very sort of kinesthetic person, so saying the words, memorizing them, saying the words over and over again, making sure that I know how I want it to be set in terms of the rhythm. The rhythm is the first thing that comes, and then I sort of think tessitura, and that informs contour, and then the music comes out of that process.
I know that you said that Barber and Rachmaninoff spoke very much to your heart.
Yeah, I find that the harmonic language of Rachmaninoff and Barber was probably my way in to classical music in general. I mean, growing up in the Bahamas and also here in Atlanta, church was a fundamental part of the fabric of my life, and the music of the Black church tradition. There are certain, there's a harmonic syntax that's very familiar. It's in my bones, and you can find a lot of that in popular music and jazz and R&B and all of that. And so the sort of extended harmonies and the sort of richness of that language I found in the classical world in Barber and Rachmaninoff. So it was an easy stepping stone from, transcribing Take Six, a gospel a cappella, group, to then wanting to, play Rachmaninoff. The same sort of harmonies were there. And I found my soul moved by it. I find that the things that most influence my music are the things that I love, not just, Barber and Rachmaninoff and those harmonies, but also the idea of America, which has really informed a lot of what I write about, trying to find a way to work towards the idea of America as a place of liberty and freedom for everyone, and trying to examine how close or how far we are away from these ideals is something that permeates a lot of my work. We have chosen this path for ourselves because we have been transformed. We have been transformed by the music that we interact with. Because I have been transformed, I also want to contribute to the transformation of a listener as well. And what better way to utilize the tools that music provides us in the effort of this transformation than to work towards a more equitable future for the society that we live in. Sometimes it's not very pleasant to be confronted with the honest nature of our reality. But I feel that music has the tools, music is a tool to provide that honest look, and then also provide us with that pathos, that invitation to empathy that will then move us towards, healing and equity.
Going back to your piece then, Lluvia, you're dealing with family separation.
I was reading a number of profiles in The Atlantic, I believe, of these parents, especially mothers, separated from their children at the border. And the sort of draconian attitude towards immigration existed long before the past 4 years. I mean, even regardless of ideology of the president, it's been quite difficult for people escaping violence or any other sort of reason causing one to move from one's country to seek a better opportunity for themselves and for their family. In trying to create a text and a narrative and a through line that would bring a face to the issue. When we see a face to the issue, then it becomes harder for us to turn off our muscles of empathy and actually say, so this is a problem, what can we do about it?
Right.
So yeah, that was the sort of emotional impetus for the writing of the piece. Knowing the intent and knowing how it feels is the easier part. The hard part is actually making a fulfilling musical product.
Yeah.
And you just never know until you actually hear it.
Right, of course.
And so it's always a gamble. You're always wanting to push yourself as a composer, try something new, try something that may fail, in service of something that you consider to be noble and worth aiming for. So,
I mean, what you're saying about narrative is so powerful because these stories that you're telling through music, I mean, in essence, that's what connects us all together, right? This human experience.
Right. Yeah.
And you strip away so many of the things that maybe separate us. It's this human experience that binds us all together, whether it's the happiness, the sadness, the fear, these just raw human emotions.
right.
And it gives me such great hope to hear you speak these words about using music to examine.
Why isn't the classical music of our country reflective of the kaleidoscopic nature of our society? I just want to be a part of the contributions towards that goal, that classical music in America can eventually be a reflection of that.
Give me my child.
there's so much creativity, imagination here in Atlanta, and trying to inspire more people to create more art, so that we're connecting with each other, listening to each other, helping the community in a time that art can really help bring us together.